It's my great pleasure to introduce you to Luca Gallarelli, who's the business director of Ogilvy in Cape Town. Tonight, we're going to hear the story about Carling Black Label, this iconic brand in South Africa. It's a unique story that we're going to hear about, and we're going to follow the path from the original development right through to the reinvention. Tonight's story is as much about beer as it is about the changing face of masculinity in South Africa.
Yeah, the Carling Black Label story, it's a unique story, and it's a story of a brand that has been forced to go through reinvention time and time again. So from cowboy to champion man, that's not just a title that I came up with because I sounded cool, and as will be borne out by the work itself. The cowboy was quite a central character, and there have been central characters in Carling Black Label's advertising throughout the history of the brand in South Africa. What we've tried to do each and every step of the way is to find a character or an icon that really connected with what we were trying to say about Carling Black Label, for what Carling Black Label truly represented, certainly in our hearts and minds, and hopefully in the hearts and minds of our consumer. So the icon of the cowboy was chosen to be what would come to epitomize the Carling Black Label man. The cowboy was someone who put in an honest day's work. He was selfless, and at the end of the day, he deserved his reward. But then, into the early 80s, something quite dramatic started to happen, and that 30% market share figure started to plummet right down to about 2%. But clearly, things were going very wrong, and something drastic needed to happen. And decisions needed to be made, and some quite scary decisions. And we don't always get them right. And it is worth showing you one of the cases where we didn't necessarily get it right. What the team tried to do was to try and stay with a changing market, try to stay with a changing context, but they did it, and I speak purely from my perspective, and this is my opinion, they did it without understanding what was special about Carling Black Label. They did it without understanding what sat at the center of this brand, and that was something that can be articulated, I suppose, as a masculine reward. It was something for a man. It was a man's reward once he's achieved. That achievement was depicted as a cowboy doing something really, really cool, but it didn't necessarily need to be that. It just gave men a reason to feel proud, and gave men a reason to feel like they deserved their beer at the end of the day. There's a duality to it. There's the reward for your hard day's work, and there's a true man deserves the reward of a beer which has 6% alcohol. Not so subtle either. Get more of what you drink beer for. That really speaks straight to the fact that it is a beer which has a little bit more of a kick. And this was the terrifying qualitative reality, was that black male respondents were saying that it's a beer for low-down whites, and white male respondents are saying that blacks drink it and then they go out and cause trouble. That's a pretty terrifying. It's a pretty terrifying position to be in. Because of this shift at the time, so now we're talking about 1989, so Carling Black Label had reached the absolute bottom within a market shifting to mildness. Was there a place for a stronger beer? Was there a place for Carling Black Label? Can we grow that market share from 2% to 2.5%? Or that's it. That's the end of the brand. That's the end of this brand that just 10 short years before had been a dominant player in the market. So the cowboy reborn. If we've gone so far as to alienate a significant segment of the beer market, is there an untapped market here? And where can we start to play? And there was a feeling that at the time we would target sort of the lower end of the market, typically blue collar work, because again there is this latent need for value, and there was a shift out of Sorghum beers into more aspirational products like beer at the time. We knew at the time that if we could crack this market, it would most probably have a bit of a snowball effect, in that the market is a market that we would term belongers. There's a real sense of belonging. A sense of community is incredibly important. The beer would still be unashamedly masculine, and if one looks at the pack, it is probably still the most masculine of all beers, just by the sheer look of it. Red and black, it screams power, it screams man. There wasn't anything frilly about it. We needed to get to the center of what made Carling Black Label special, and to do that we needed to look back to the cowboy and understand why the cowboy was so successful, other than the fact that Clint Eastwood was popular at the time and cowboys were popular at the time. What was that cultural tension? Why was it truly starting to connect with men, and what did men see of themselves in that communication? So what we wanted to do with these characters was to truly start to build a mythology around them, to create icons, I suppose. The characters were portrayed as absolute heroes. So I suppose fundamentally the strategy was absolutely the same. Nothing really changed from the days of the cowboy to the days of the worker. We were just representing it slightly differently. It is still about a guy putting in a hard day's work, his achievement at the end of the day, doing something, achieving something, and then having his Carling Black Label, which would be a tangible representation of this achievement. And the beer they choose, like them, has taken on the world and won. The beer that refreshes and rewards like no other. Now, you start to see references to taking on the world and won, and that's something which has become increasingly important in the most recent journey that Carling Black Label has been on. And that is that in the early 90s, almost by accident, what happens is the breweries, the SAB enters these global tasting competitions and global beer awards. And to everyone's surprise, including everyone within SAB, Carling Black Label in, I think, 1991 won the best bottled lager in the world at Burton-upon-Trent, which is the biggest beer awards.
How to stop a mountain from falling into the sea.
Chapman Street was open for traffic today.
Carling Black Label. More refreshment, more reward at the end of the day.
For the most part, that's an absolutely fantastic result to become the dominant beer in South Africa when you have every other player in the market fighting for 47-48% share. It's around about this time that we were all patting ourselves on the back, saying what an amazing job we'd all done, and this is a case study for consistency, and nothing can stop us now. This market is just going to continue growing, and then that's what started to happen. So we end up in a situation like that, and you have the dominant brand starting to plummet, and you start to scratch your heads and say, shit, everything that we thought was right, and everything that we thought was, everything that we were beating our chests about, in fact, maybe the consistency was part of our undoing. The reality is that, masculinity had evolved way beyond that, and certainly the context within South Africa, from the context of the trade unions in the mid to late 80s, through to the elections in '94, through to the rise of the black middle class. I suppose the changing role of women in society, what that meant for men, all of these things started to alienate people away from the worker hero type archetype. What we needed to do, and it sounds so completely bloody obvious, but because it is that we needed to remain relevant, and we needed to understand that masculinity had shifted, and what was the change? Was there a changing role for Carling Black Label in their lives, and if it was, what was it, or had they just changed? And we just needed to understand where does the rubber hit the road in this. 18 months ago, we put this piece of this commercial out, and really what it aimed to do was to reflect this changing role of men in society, or this changing role of men, to say that men, you're not so one-dimensional. The modern man is multidimensional. He has multiple facets.
They are passionate. They are pride. They deserve real reward. Carling Black Label.
So what we started to do there, or quite explicitly, and whether it came across or not, was to try and reframe how men use their hands. Because for 20 years, the context of how men use their hands was tossing a brick to each other or pulling themselves up a building by a rope. Because if I put 3 or 4 beers in front of you without a label on and tell you to choose the best tasting beer, if that is completely uninformed by the brand, what we find is that 80% of the time you'll choose the Carling Black Label, which is one of those weird stats. We've now started to crystallize this notion of Carling's view on men and saying that actually men who achieve in the world are champions. And we had this beer, which is a beer which was a champion beer, was really starting to deliver on an international stage, and people were starting to say, you know what, actually it does taste quite lekker. So how do we start to bring these things together? And this is an AV manifesto which really starts to bring it to life. It may feel like an ad. It's not an ad. It's longer than an ad. I suppose it's far more explicit than an ad. But it gives you a real sense of what Carling Black Label is all about to us, and how we view Carling Black Label today, and how we would hope that in 4 or 5 years' time, once we've untaught you everything that we taught you for 20 years, that if I asked you what Carling Black Label is all about, you would say, this is it.
They're the brave, strong, true men who keep our world turning. The entrepreneurs, the fathers, the community builders, the sportsmen, the leaders. You dig deep. You put in the hard yards. You make that last lunge for the line. You do the right thing. You're never afraid to do whatever it takes. You have backbone. You never give in and never give up. You believe in being the best you can be. You have the fire in your belly to take on the world and win. You are all champions. And you deserve truly rewarding, full-bodied, real beer taste. An award-winning beer that has time and time again proven itself. South Africa's champion beer. You deserve a Carling Black Label. The beer for champion men who have earned their true reward. Because champion men deserve champion beer. Carling Black Label.
What we want to do is we want to bring champion experiences to ordinary men. We want to make ordinary men feel like champions. So how do we do that within soccer? This is how we did it.
South African men love two things: soccer and Carling Black Label. It's South Africa's biggest beer. And when soccer fans crack open a Carling Black Label and watch a game, chances are they're watching Kaizer Chiefs and Orlando Pirates. They're South Africa's biggest soccer clubs. But Carling Black Label noticed that the fans were getting more and more frustrated with the coaches. The coaches were coming from foreign countries like Brazil and Serbia, and they weren't as connected with the local flavor of South African soccer. The fans believed they knew their soccer clubs better than the coaches. All South African fans needed was a chance to prove themselves. So Carling Black Label gave the power to South African fans by creating a Carling Black Label Cup. The fans could pick the players for their team. The fans could make a live substitution on the day of the game. For the first time in football history, the fans could literally be the coach. We launched the campaign in TV, press, radio and online with Dutch coach Ruud Gullit. Soccer fans immediately began voting for the players they wanted in the team by using the unique code under the cap of their Carling Black Label. The only thing a fan needed to cast a vote and become a coach was the one thing South African fans already had: a cell phone. We designed and built a unique mobile platform that gave the fans a chance to vote for the players they wanted. We built a website where fans could see their teams and share it on Facebook and Twitter. After 7 weeks of intense voting, the teams were announced, as selected by South African fans. The campaign ignited fierce debate in the media between fans, purists, players, and journalists. Even the coaches got involved. One thing wasn't up for debate: South African soccer fans loved the idea. We received over 10.5 million votes in 7 weeks. Tickets for the historic match set new records, with over 85,000 fans attending and millions more watching on TV. The Carling Black Label Facebook page grew by 450%. Our following on Twitter grew by 600%. Over 83 million rands worth of PR was generated for Carling Black Label. The game itself couldn't have played out better. The first Carling Black Label Cup was decided in a dramatic penalty shootout.
Orlando Pirates have won the inaugural Carling Black Label.
And even though Orlando Pirates won and Kaizer Chiefs lost, South African fans all celebrated their own victory because, thanks to the Carling Black Label Cup, they finally had the chance to be the coach.
Certainly in terms of where we are now, we've turned it a significant corner. You know, conventional wisdom would tell you, certainly in this instance, that was the exception rather than the rule, having the ability to do that. When these big brands start to slide, they often become, the momentum is often so strong that they become unstoppable forces until they, you know, the equity is almost completely eroded. But we've actually managed to not only arrest the decline, but the decline, this graph is starting to, it's leveled out and it's starting to smile again. So we certainly feel like we've turned a massive corner. Certainly what we're doing, it's not perfect, and I would never stand up here and profess for it to be perfect. It's going to, I'm sure it's going to change, I'm sure it's going to evolve into the years, and hopefully we learn from what we did right here, and hopefully we learn from what we did badly here, and carry those learnings through to hopefully see it, you know, regain its place as the undisputed champion beer when it comes to beer volume in South Africa. And that's it from me.